All right, and welcome back to Mr. B's math class. Today we're going to look at 8.5, applying integer operations. So our student outcome for today is I can apply the order of operations to solve integer problems. So really just that natural next step in our unit of just taking what we've learned so far and applying it in that BEDMAS situations for problem solving. So let's look at method one, which is the only method we're going to look at for this lesson, which is just essentially applying the order of operations. And you should remember this if you were paying attention in our unit 6 when we looked at BEDMAS with our fractions. So for step one, it just simply says apply the order of operations. So when we take a look here at our question, we have negative 15 divided by negative 3, subtracting positive 4, multiplying by negative 2. So we'll look at our BEDMAS and ask ourselves, do we have any brackets? Well, yes, we do, but there's not much we can do with them just yet. Do we have exponents? No, we don't. Now, if you remember, we look at it, do we have division and multiplication? Because really, it doesn't have to be in that specific order. You look at division, multiplication, and you work left to right. So we look here, and we say, yeah, we definitely do. We have division here on the left and multiplication on the right, and we always move left to right when we're solving these questions. So we'll look right away, and we'll apply our sine rule. So if we take a look here, we have negative 15 divided by negative 3. We know that a negative divided by a negative is going to equal a positive. So we know that the answer we have no matter what is going to be a negative. Then we do the work. 15 divided by 3 we know is going to be 5. Oops, I meant positive, sorry, not negative, obviously. So positive 5, subtract, we leave that, and then we're going to work here at our multiplication statement. So we have a positive and a negative, and we know that a positive multiplying a negative, they're different signs, so it's going to equal a negative in the end. So we know that in our bracket, the answer is going to be negative. And we know that we have a 4 multiplied by 2 is going to give us an 8. So now we have a positive 5, subtract negative, essentially subtract a negative 8. So let's see what that looks like here. So I'm just going to get more space so I can write it down. But we have a positive 5 subtracting a negative 8. Now, when we had our BEDMAS there, we know we did all of those steps. So we asked ourselves here, okay, do we have addition, subtraction? Yeah, we have subtraction, so we go right to it. Now, when we look at this question here, what we need to understand is that the positive 5 is just chilling there. But essentially, it's saying a positive 5 subtract a negative 8 or minus a minus 8. Well, that's going to impact what this actually becomes. Right now, we have a negative and a negative here. Even though it's outside the brackets, it is impacting that sign inside the brackets. So it's essentially like saying a negative multiplied by a negative, because there's two right side by side each other. So we ask ourselves in the sine rule, a negative and a negative we know is going to equal a positive. So what we're actually going to, if we even move into this, is we're going to change that sign. So then it then becomes, I'm just going to erase that here, it then becomes a positive 5, all right, and a negative is a positive, plus 8, because there were two negatives back to back, okay? So now we have positive 5 plus 8, which we just add them together because they're the same. We're going to get positive 13, and that is our answer, okay? I know that's confusing at first, but just because you do have those two signs side by side, you do have to apply the sine rule, even though one is outside the brackets and one is inside the brackets. So look at the next example to see kind of that sine rule in action again. So here we've got a negative 6 subtracting a negative 9 plus a negative 14 divided by a positive 2. So if I write my BEDMAS down again, okay, I'm going to ask myself, are there any brackets to solve? Well, when we look at this question, we know that really there are brackets, but nothing to solve within them. So not going to worry about that. We have any exponents? Don't worry about that. Now, division, multiplication, working left to right. If we look at that here, we do have division and no multiplication, so we'll just check that right there, and we'll solve it. So we're going to leave essentially for ourselves here, we're going to leave the negative 6, the subtraction addition on its own for now, and I'm just going to move over to here. So negative 14 divided by positive 2. We know that right now at the sine rule, we have a negative dividing by a positive, so we know they're different signs, so the answer is going to be, oops, I meant to do a negative there. The answer is going to be a negative. So negative, and then we do the work. So 14 divided by 2 is 7. So now our new question looks like this. Negative 6 subtract negative 9 plus positive 7. So we're just going to take that and go over to the next slide and do that all over again. So it should have been, if I have a really good memory here, it should have looked like this. Negative 6 subtract a negative 9 plus a negative 7. Now, going back to our BEDMAS again, we know that we've taken care of this, and now we're left with addition and subtraction. Now, we don't have to follow the order again. You work left to right, so we don't have to do addition first. You do addition and subtraction, but you're going to move left to right. So when we look here, left to right, we do have subtraction first. We're going to take care of that right now. So we have right now a negative 6 subtract a negative 9. Now, if you remember from the last question, negative 6 stays the same, but in here, we have a negative and a negative, which is like saying a negative times a negative, because there's two signs back to back. We know that that's going to be a positive, so that's actually going to change that to a positive 9. So our question then becomes negative 6 plus 9. When we look at it, we have 6 negatives and 9 positives, so we have more positive than negative, so the answer is going to be positive no matter what. And really, it just looks like us saying 9 minus 6. So if we take away those 6 negatives from the 9 positives, we're left over with 3 positives, I'm sorry. Now that we've got that, we're going to drop down this plus a negative 7. Okay, we can do the addition now. And when we look at this, the same sign rule applies again. We have a positive and a negative, and we know that a positive times a negative is going to leave us with different signs, a negative. So if we then rewrite that right here, we have the question of positive 3 and a positive and negative is negative 7, which essentially becomes positive 3 minus 7. Now we know from grade 7's work on integers, we have 7 negatives and 3 positives. There's more negative than positives. We know the answer in the end is going to be negative, and it just becomes negative 7 plus 3. When we get rid of those plus 3, we are left with 4 left over, and the answer becomes negative 4. So for these next two here, if you understand, I'm totally okay if you'd like to move on to the assignment, but if you'd like some more help with or more review on that, you can continue doing this. I'd like you to take a look at example 3 here, and if you'd like more practice, try it for yourself. You can hit pause here and try it for yourself, and then unpause it when you want to see the solution. So I'll give you a second to pause it. Now, if all went well, you paused the lesson, and now you're just going to watch me show you the solution after you completed it for yourself. So when we look at this question here, we're going to look at our BEDMAS once more, and we're going to look at our order of operations. So, do we have any brackets? And the answer is yes, we do. It's right here. We've got to take care of that work inside the bracket first. So right now, I have a positive 4 plus a negative 1. Well, in that situation, I need to deal with that first. I've got to make sure I change those signs. Because in there, I've got a positive essentially with that positive there, and it's right impacting that negative inside the bracket. So it's like saying a positive multiplied by a negative, which we know is a negative. So I'm going to rewrite that work in the brackets as positive 4, a negative and a positive is a negative, and negative 1. Well, we know that really that's just simple, again, addition, subtraction of our integers, but it's inside the bracket, so we're going to do it right now. So we have 4 positives and 1 negative. That is just simply like saying positive 4 minus 1. So we know that in that bracket, the answer is going to end up being positive 3. So then we can then take that and move that on to the next. So we're going to go to the next slide here. I'm just going to rewrite what that looked like. It should have said negative 8. I believe I was correct on this here. Plus negative 2. And the answer we got should have been multiplied by, it should have been positive 3. Now, if we go back to BEDMAS once more, we did our job with our brackets. They're good. Now we're looking at exponents. There are none. Now division and multiplication, we do work left to right. I don't see any division on the left or anything, but I keep moving across, and I do see multiplication here. So yes, we're going to work on that right now. So right now I apply that sine rule, and I do see that I have a negative multiplying by a positive, which we know because they're different signs, the answer is going to be a negative. So negative, and we do the work, 2 times 3, we know it's 6, so we have an answer of negative 6. Now, I've checked that off and it's good to go. I'm going to drop down what we haven't used yet. And then I ask myself, do we have addition and subtraction, left to right? Yep, I do. I have addition. I'm going to work on that right now. So just like before, we applied that sine rule on our addition and subtraction. I have right here, sitting here, a negative and a positive, or a positive and a negative. I know that a positive and a negative are different signs, so the answer is going to be negative. So I'm going to rewrite it like I see it. Negative 8 subtract 6, or negative 8 and minus 6. When we do this integer operation, just like we did in grade 7, we look at it, they are the same sign, but the sign rules don't apply if we're just doing addition and subtraction. So negative 8 subtract 6, we know that that's going to group together to give us a more, a bigger negative number. So we group what are alike while they're both the same. So negative 8 and minus 6, or negative 6, becomes negative 14. And that becomes our answer because we group what are alike in our addition subtraction. Or if you were to look at that number line where we had our, negative 8, we know that negatives were more negative, so we would have kept counting 6 times and gotten to negative 14 if you use that number line. So that is it for that one. And finally, our last example. So same thing again, you can pause it here, give yourself a chance to try it yourself, and then unpause for the solution. I'll give you a second to do that now, and then we will move on. So with this here, just like usual, you've unpaused it. So obviously you've tried it yourself, and we'll just see how you did. So we're going to follow the operations here, the order of operations. So we're going to ask ourselves, do you have any brackets? The answer is no. Those brackets we're not going to count because it's not a bracket operation. Any exponents? No. Do you have division and multiplication? Well, the answer is yes, absolutely we do. And actually, we look at it, we have 2 separate types of division here. But we know that we need to work left to right when we're doing these operations, meaning that we're going to target this side first. So right now, I have a positive 30 divided by a negative 10. Well, we do the order of operations, which we've done. Now we're going to do the sine rule. Well, we have a positive dividing by a negative, which we know a positive and a negative, different signs. The answer is going to be a negative. So right now, what we're going to do is put that in here. It's a negative. And 30 divided by 10, we know the answer is going to be 3. Now, our answer, if I drop everything else back down here, it's going to end up being negative 3 plus negative 20 divided by negative 1. So I'm just going to drop that to the next side here, just so we've got that to keep moving with. All right, awesome. A little technical difficulty there. We should have our brackets here. I'm just going to redo this here. We should have our negative 3, and we should have it as plus negative 20 divided by our negative 1. So, as we mentioned before, we had looked at our division. There was 2 of them. So now we're going to move to the second division. So we look at it here. For our sine rule, we do have a negative dividing by a negative, which is the same sign. We know the answer is going to be positive. So it's going to be a positive, whatever it is. And we do the work. 20 divided by 1, we know is going to be, obviously, 20. So in our brackets now, the question becomes negative 3 plus positive 20. Now we look at our order of operations again. BEDMAS, we've tackled all of those, so we're good. Now we have addition and subtraction, left to right. Well, we've only got one statement left, and it's addition. So we're going to move on to that now. Just like before we look at it, before we can even tackle that problem, we have to do the sine rule. Now we do have a positive and a positive, so we know that a positive multiplied by a positive, the same sign, it's going to equal a positive. So our question should look like this. Negative 3 plus 20. Now when we look at it, we have 20 positives and 3 negatives, so we have more positives, and we're just going to subtract or take away the lesser group. So we look at it, 20 subtract 3 it's just going to end up being positive 17. And that's all there is to it. So that's pretty much it for this lesson. That's 4 questions. If you need any other help or more reviews, please feel free to check out the rest of that page for the additional videos I posted there, or see me in class tomorrow. We can take care of this in class. But that is it for today, and I will see you all tomorrow.